Here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the compost pile. We are very honored today. Meaning Keith and I are both very honored today to have this conversation. And we've known each other for some time. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Keith Knapp. He is currently at Iowa State University. Met Keith maybe, I can't remember now, 12 years ago during a retreat weekend, and just love him dearly, and so honored that he chose to spend some time with me talking a little bit about eco-spirituality, but environmental justice, eco-justice, and posthumanism. So here we go, and I'm going to just ask Keith if you would just introduce yourself to the listening audience. Just tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. So as you said, I'm here at Iowa State. That's where I'm located. That's about how I think about this. So I guess I look at myself and who I am as an integrator. I try to integrate a number of disparate worlds that I revolve in a number of different ways, including what we're talking about here today. There are groups that I work with that I try to introduce this part of my life to, and then there are groups that revolve, again, in the things we do that I try to explain to my other side, if you will. And sometimes it works well, and sometimes it doesn't. Because, of course, my background is in very technical engineering, and this type of thing that we're talking about now is not something at all that can take advantage of my education. The human education I got, I had to leap out of that in many ways in order to understand some of the things that I now investigate and look at and try to internalize in different ways and define in my own way. So yeah, that's who I am.
Okay.
Most people wouldn't know that unless they watch this podcast.
Right. The engineer. Would you say a little bit about your journey, as much as you feel comfortable saying, your journey through your kind of worldview?
Yeah, throughout the years, you have a technical background, and some of what we're going to be probably talking about tonight. I have gone through a process. I'm a civil engineer, which is all about building and taking advantage of resources in many different ways, hopefully in a sustainable way. That's happening more now than it was. And for many years, I'm a transportation person. I built and designed roadways and things like that. And of course, that's evolved into a situation later in life, if you will, where I realized and kind of looked at that and thought, okay, there's more to life, if you will, than work and getting things done and producing. And I think I've told you my story where I finally just said, okay, I gotta take a break, take a week or two here and go off and be by myself. And in this case, it was Santa Fe out in the desert. I went out to the parks by myself and things like that during the day, and realized that in many ways I was out there doing contemplative thought, contemplative thinking, connecting with nature, which I hadn't been doing on a regular basis, and realized that there was so much more to life than what I've been doing, and that my interaction with that had to adjust, had to change. That it wasn't about all of that and all the humans and non-humans and sentient beings and everything else. It was about how I was interacting with all of that, and my approach to that. And it sounds simple now to me, but at the time it was enlightening for me to go, wow. And it changed the way I approached my life from that point forward, with regard to how I paid attention to what was going on inside myself and how I was interacting with just about everything. And then I met you and all of these wonderful people that helped me on that journey. And I still have those people that hold my hand when I need it held, and lead me and teach me, or point me maybe and go, okay, think about this a little bit. And yeah, and that's been the last 15 years of my life, something like that, 12 or 15 years of my life. So my life has gotten much bigger in many ways since that time. So
I love that. I love that. Thank you. And thank you for telling your story so beautifully. I love that. I want to talk to you today a little bit, pick your brain and your heart open a little bit about what context we find ourselves in right now. It has been called philosophically posthumanism, and posthumanism meaning beyond, humanism, which arose right in the Renaissance period, and it can all things exalting all things human, right, and the centrality of the human, the triumph of the human capacity for reason, creativity, all of the great humanist principles, which gave rise to pretty foundational things for Western civilization. And as we've been evolving, and modernism and postmodernism, now we're seeing trends in posthumanism, and the rise of posthumanism, really does decentralize the human being from the center of all meaning and the center of the drama of existence. It takes us out of this, great chain of being, the hierarchy of being, where humans are seen as being maybe created in the divine image, so close to the divine on this hierarchical scale, and creation is kind of at the foot of everything, and therefore our resources, therefore our disposal. Genesis 1:28 comes to mind. A lot of people grew up with that. Fill the earth, subdue it, have dominion. And we had this disconnect, right? And now with posthumanism coming along, we're recognizing our embeddedness in the web of creation. And postmodernism, had us very disintegrated. And posthumanism, is very much, that turn to, as we're more enmeshed with, certainly with technology, we're cybernetic, organisms, cyborgs. And then also this embeddedness in creation. And I'm just wondering, as you're thinking about, living in this age, in this postmodern context, we talk about environmental justice, making sure that all the human beings on the planet have equal access to Earth's goods and also equal protection from Earth's degradation. So environmental justice, and then eco-justice, right? That wider understanding of justice for the planet and the creature kin and the arbor elders and, the oceans and, the soil, justice, eco-justice, justice for the oikos, for the world, for the home planet. As we're thinking about environmental justice, which really is connected with, racism, embedded racism, and eco-justice, which is the sense of human beings being on a higher plane than every other living being in creation. Now we're in this post-human context where we say, wait a minute, we're questioning our assumptions about all of that. How does this way of thinking affect you as you go about your work as an engineer, certainly, but also just your daily interface with the planet and with your colleagues and university structures? How does this affect you?
yeah, big stuff. I love the fact that you did this, because I was talking to someone last night actually that said it's not about this, it's about this, it's about horizontal relationships, right? When you realize that everything is interconnected and that there is no separation, at least, I should say, that's my thought process is when there's really no difference between them, there's no them and us. It's bound to impact how you interact. Now, we've got these structures within our human lives that kind of force us to operate in those structures. But when you start thinking that way, it tends to result in you interacting differently with people even within those structures. And sometimes, and we were just talking, sometimes people don't understand that because it's, when you're born and raised a certain way, if you will, and within a certain culture, it's hard to say, look at that. And when I say, well, listen, the mountain over there is breathing, or the mountain's living. It's not just that it's got things on it, it's breathing itself. And, and the other thing that came up, a couple of the things that come up, of course, is I mentioned this rhythm, right? Um, there's this rhythm to the world, to your bodies, to the groups of people we interact with, and with everything that us good old humans have done over a short period of time in the whole scheme of things. And what we've done is we've impacted that rhythm. And to get back to that rhythm, for me, I just have to, you have to settle in, right? And you can see that rhythm and feel that rhythm when you go out, right? When you walk out into nature, and you can literally feel that difference between walking in the woods and walking into the crops, right? You can feel that rhythm, and you can feel the impact. Maybe that's it, that interface of that impact. Well, this is the result of what's been happening, right? We've been trying to kind of control things. Not kind of, it's kind of what we've been told to do: take, use, produce, and control. The other thing that came up in that conversation from last night was it's all about the joy and the love. Beauty is not always at the top of the mountain. It's the small stuff, the smallest little things that you see as you walk or stop and walk, and the wonderful and the things they have to teach us, right? All the way down to the cellular structures, right? Of leaves and flowers and all that. These are highly intelligent beings that have actually a much longer intelligence than we do. It's different. We try to humanize all that, everything, right? I love some of the research that's going on now that says, the big one, right, was, hey, by the way, the whales have what was it? Alphabetic. Their sonar is alphabetic. They figured out, right? Yeah, just recently, like the last couple of days, they came up with that. It's like, yeah, actually, there's meaning to it. We can't understand it, but that we understand that there's actually a pattern here. And of course, what we try to do is make it, our ABCs or something. And it's interesting to watch that, because their knowledge and intelligence, of course, has grown over a longer period of time. And it's much more, it's deeper, right? And it's different. It's not the way we communicate. I think I'm going way off track from what you asked about.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. Rhythm keeps coming up for me, and it's come up just recently with regard to all of this, and the fact that you're not trying to separate stuff out. That tree has its own life and living and intelligence just as we do. That separation is actually our perception of the world, right?
Yeah, that separation that you talked about so eloquently, and the integration in this, right? The horizontal relationships, it affects our sense of justice. And I know, in you're in a hierarchical structure in a university setting. You're also in a scientific community that reveres peer review, right? For the process of, weeding out some things that are, less than verifiable. And so, as you think about justice and environmental justice and eco justice in this context where humans are now seen as part of the picture, but not the whole or the governing or the only agent able to control, affect, as you said, I guess you said, basically you use the resources and then you dispose of them as you will. How does that sense of justice, what does that look like for you as you're thinking about your day?
Yeah. It's interesting what I feel when I go by someone cutting a tree down now, or they have these devices now. And again, I interact with these folks that have to clear roadsides. I call them rippers, because they literally rip the limbs off of trees. And I shouldn't laugh, because it just pains me to see it. And that shift in me is like night and day over the decades. The fact that I feel that every time I see it. And in the past, it was, that's just the way it was. So it 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 impacts how I interact with the land, how, when I'm hiking or whatever I'm doing. It impacts how I interact with just about everything. Uh, because yeah, when I'm running, I think I may have mentioned this to you before. Today, I ran 4 or 5 miles today, and here I am stepping over anthills and making sure I'm literally watching where I'm running. 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have thought twice about that. Because the smallest little things, are so important to everything. You don't know what piece of it all is going to impact what, because we don't have our hands around all of that. Maybe some of us do more than others, but I got to try. Sometimes I try to humanize. What is the worm thinking as it goes across the sidewalk, right? Is it like them going across the Sierra, or are they Sierra Desert, or like how we would go across the desert, or is it just them going, you know what, I'm just doing my thing? Why should I care? So sorry. It gets into the fact that you have to think about whether the mountain has rights, the rock has rights, the trees have rights, right? I mean, that's where it ultimately leads me. And that's still something I'm working through. I certainly believe it. It's all about the implementation of it, right? How to make that work. And it gets me back to the fact that, there was also a recent article on the fact that I think it was amphibians and reptiles have potential consciousness, right? However you define that. And there are those that say we shouldn't even try to define consciousness. But that's scientists, a group of scientists going, you know what? Maybe we should be thinking about this differently than what we have in the past. And I love that idea. And I would guess they're often on the fringes, even now. And hopefully at some point that becomes less of because we've had such a big impact on everything around the world and the whole world, right? That if we don't step into this next stage of there isn't this difference. We're all in this together. We can't survive, humans, unless we make that leap. And how quickly can we make it? I took a workshop, Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. And one of the very first things in that book was, my recollection was, just imagine humans are gone in 100 years. Get comfortable with that. Now move forward from there. And to get comfortable with that if we don't kind of do something about this, we could just be, nature's highly resilient. We have to learn from nature to be resilient in whatever way is required. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. And you're talking right at the heart of deep, the claims of deep ecology, the rights of creation to exist and to thrive. And when, the claims of, posthumanism is that, it's not all about us. And so once we say, every living being on this planet, in this beautiful biosphere that we all call home, that's all our home. If we relegate every part of existence to its meaning, its value, only related to humanity's use of it, or our disposal of it, or our will for its life or not, it's shit. Everything shifts if we're in a post-human context now, right? So that's it, Keith. I guess what I'm asking you is what should be our central focus now in this time? You said you read the book, You know, if there are no humans 100 years from now, you know, then let's move on from there. You know, should our central focus be saving humanity's path by imitating nature, you know, so that we can sustain, so we can be sustainable as a species? Should it be us getting out of the way of nature? You know, like, for example, you know, Half Earth, right? E.O. Wilson. Should it be, you know, something different? What do you see as, you know, our what's our great work? Thomas Berry would say, do the great work, you know, of
Yeah.
healing the earth. What do you think our central focus should be right now?
Mm. And you know, and we can't, how do we do that and not, you know, because you think back to hunter gatherers and that kind of thing. And but how can we're not, how can we move forward and do that with all the technologies we have and all the capabilities we have? How can we turn that in a way that uses all that? Because I don't see that going away. And I'm not sure that's the solution to, like, you know, go back in history, if you will. We are where we are. So it's our interaction. You mentioned technology and things like that. There are great things. Again, I saw an article the other day. Someone was using biodegradable straws. I can't remember what they're made of, corn syrup or something, to save the coral reefs. And I thought, wow, you know, that's what comes of the technology and the knowledge we have, and using it in a way. And the fellow that had invented it said, I never thought this was the way this was ever going to be used. But look, you know, it's helping the coral reefs. And so it's really thinking outside the box for a lot of things. And you think about how we measure success nationally, corporation wise. There are a few that are kind of making these steps where they're trying to bring in these ideas of social justice, of how do we measure success at a corporate level. I'm assuming they're pretty much of a minority at this point, but they are there. There are people that are taking these approaches, that it's not all about, if you will, the almighty buck. It's about also making this place a better place to live and interact. So I think we got to figure out how to integrate and integrate what we've got into where we need to go. And that's not easy. That can be very overwhelming. And that's why, you know, the thing with what if humans weren't around anymore, that's to get over that overwhelm and do what you can where you are. Otherwise, you're going at it with hate, or like it's a battle versus embracing it. And that's a huge difference, because you'll burn out, right, if you're constantly just going at it with hate. So I don't know that I'm answering your question, because I'm not sure I know. I think I think it's when we see something that's seems to be taking us down the proper path, we have to figure out how to embrace it in mass. And you know, that's fighting some pretty big cultural things right now. And I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is some of the craziness we're seeing is all about fear, because there's changes that are close to us, and then there's these big changes that are happening, and our general tendency is to go to war with it, right? And a lot of people would say, yeah, as soon as I hear that, I think it was Eckhart Tolle or something that says, when I hear it's a war against something, I know it's going to fail right away, because it's all about conquering instead of collaborating and figuring out how to make it work. And so, you know, we got some bright points out there, and I try to hold on to those as big as I can. And it's easy to hold, you know, when you go out to nature, you can see how resilient it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I have talked about how it looks like this big mess, but it's not. it's evolved into that. We've stuck our fingers in it now and again, sometimes too much, but it figures out how to live. And we see all that happening, right? I mean, there's a lot of extinction going on now, clearly, but we also see this evolution of lots of species to what's going on, you know. And I don't know, I think with where we approach things as humans is sometimes not that we want to evolve, it's that we want to control it. So, you know, the winds get stronger, build bigger buildings and stronger buildings, right? And there's got to be other ways. So,
Yeah, I thank you. I love that. And that adaptation piece, right? And biomimicry is where, we look like geniuses in imitation of nature, but it's what do we teach our kids, right now is the most important thing that you can do and that we can do as a species. And it's, you're saying that, pay attention, and learn and see the resilience and be the resilience and, you know, to place yourself, at the service of the whole rather than over to dominate or control or build better. And the battle imagery, like what you're talking about, really makes sense. I hear that resonates with me because of the maybe the religious traditions we grew up with or the spiritual traditions where everything is you have to be strong and fight evil and it's a battle paradigm till the last, which leads me to my last question, which is about spirituality. And how do you understand, spirituality, this earth grounded spirituality, eco spirituality in this post-human context when maybe it really isn't all about the drama of our salvation or our, ultimate destiny to a next life or, whatever that is. How do you understand spirituality in this context?
eco spirituality that saved my life. It's, you know, I think I've told you this story about when I started looking into Buddhism and meditation and asked them about whether I had to stop believing in God. And my definition and that exploration, which can be very scary, led me to a number of different places. But when you see the divine in everything, it's easy to be with the divine, you know, when it's literally everywhere, and you see it in people. Sometimes it's covered up. I was that way for many years, where it was, you've encased it and pushed it down. I still struggle with that, but when you go out into nature and you can see the divine in everything, and it's hard not to. Um, that's my spirituality right now, quite honestly. It's hard for me to put in words. I've been asked about what my spirituality is like and things like that, and that's a hard question to answer, and it's unique to every individual person because I think it's always evolving for me in one form or another, and it's ebbing and flowing. But there's a few very particular things like, I can find God or the divine in myself and also in church. It's changed how you mentioned Genesis. It's changed how I've read the Bible. It's changed how I pray, because I can pray to a plant. And what I'm saying, and God is in that, the divine is in that, so that's maybe, and it's all connected to what kind of how this all started, right? Why is it that I now sometimes cry when I see him cutting a tree down? They're cutting the divine down. But in the end, it's also changed my relationship with death, and it's all energy. It's all just changing energy, whether we're here or on the outside of the universe, near what do they call it, the event horizon, and they have all these wonderful names of these forms and things that they're finding out in the far reaches of the universe, often related to God. But you're here, you're there. You and I were talking about my brother dying. He's still here. He's still floating around. He's in this wall in front of me. He's in the desk I'm leaning on right now, and taking different form. And so I guess that gets back into, you started with the compost pile, right? So it's all recycling. It's all recycling. It's nothing's thrown out, nothing's gained, nothing's lost. So to me, that's that's where I am. And when you talk about it all being interconnected, you know, next time you see a cicada, you know, I saw a goose the other day that reminded my nephew. You know, I'm humanizing this guy because he was, move over on the couch, and he squawked at me, and this goose looked at me and said, "What are you doing?" and squawked at me too. So I'm like, okay, you're my nephew. So that's me humanizing things, but at the same time, it's also me going, it's the same thing. My nephew's gonna love that I just compared him to a goose.
Well, and you mentioned the cicadas and what's going on right now, with the cicada explosion of population into distinct groups coming together to burst out at this point. I have encountered exactly what you're saying, with my native human kin here. The immediate response is kill, eradicate, keep it away and destroy. And I'm saying, can we learn? Can we learn? Can we celebrate this time as sacred? Their lifespan is so short. Can we make this a time like the eclipse or like the Northern Lights that we experienced here, to be able to really enter into that time with reverence and to learn and to listen. And I'm not getting good feedback so far. What I'm hearing is still the, more pesticides, more, more swatting and so forth. So it's kind of, refreshing in a way that is deeply spiritual for me as well, to witness the slaughter of our arbor elders, our creature kin, and to feel the pain of, that violence, and to recognize that as not only the violence that we ourselves feel viscerally, but that we, as the wider we of the biosphere, that we feel every time that energy is violently dispersed and destroyed. And so, thank you for that. And I, in my heart, that we share that love and that cadence, that rhythm, as you said, with
nature puts on these great shows. All you got to do is pay attention, right?
Yeah.
That's harder, easier said than done sometimes, but it's putting on great shows all the time. Just look up, right? Every once in a while. And it's like, wow, you can't be awed and find wonder in some of the stuff that goes on. Or you look down, right? Look deep into the ground, look into the soil, hold it in your hands, and yeah, it's wonderful.
I think on every one of these podcasts, I have been a poem comes and you love poetry and you write poetry, Keith, and I love your poetry. I think the poem that is coming to me at the end of this conversation is a David Whyte poem. And you're saying pay attention, and that's kind of the key. And if you're amenable to this, I'd like to just read this. David Whyte wrote, "Everything is waiting for you. Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone, as if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witness to the tiny hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely even you at times have felt the grand array, the swelling presence and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. You must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you, and the tiny speaker in the phone is your dream ladder to divinity. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. all the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. And I want to just say thank you on behalf of our listeners, Keith, to coming to spend this time with me tonight, and blessing for you and your good work and way of being in creation. Thank you to you. Appreciate you.
Thank you. So
Okay.
great way to end that.